Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hoping and praying that you guys are good. I think I lost my camera for a second. My bad. Did it again. But should be good now. We should be good. If I stop hitting the button trying to cut the volume up to make sure that you can actually hear me. So anyway, good evening. Welcome back to Live, Love, Laugh, and Learn with LaVon. Just as a recap, I have been talking about matters of the heart for the past couple of weeks. So this is week 3 on matters of the heart. This is actually the month of the heart. This entire month of March, I'll be talking about matters of the heart. So last month actually was an introduction. Last week we talked about heart growth and how do we get into a better position as far as where we are and what's coming. As we know, what's in our hearts is what comes out of our mouth. And that's why it's important that we make sure that we are constantly growing so that we're maturing, right? Tonight, yay, we're going to talk about guiding our heart. So excited. This is something that I've been thinking about for the past few weeks now, because I realized that we have the power to guide, first of all, our hearts. And once our hearts are going in the right direction, then our actions follow, right? And I have been very close to making some decisions that were not quite aligned with how I believe the Lord would want my heart to be guided. So I just bless you on today. I thank God for you. I ask that God would just cover you and keep you, that he would do something miraculous in your life on this day, that he would heal you in those areas, heal me, heal us in those areas that we don't even know that need healing. As we're talking about our hearts, that God would just do a new thing for us in our hearts in this season. And there's a very, very season that God would do a new thing for us. So listen, the scripture verses that I want to talk about tonight are Psalm 121, verses 1 through 3 in the Passion Translation. I really want to focus on 3a, but I think that reading verse 1 and 2 will give us a point of reference. The Passion Translation, Psalm 121, we're talking about guiding our heart tonight. I look up to the mountains and hills, longing for God's help. But then I realized that our true help and protection is only from the Lord, our Creator who made the heavens and earth. He will guard and guide me, never letting me stumble. Did you hear me? Verse number 3, the Passion Translation, the first part of verse number 3 says, He will guard and guide me. He will guard and guide me. He will guard and guide us, never letting us stumble or fall. I love that. It's two different things that I get from verses 1 through 3a. As we talk about God guiding us or us allowing God to guide us in matters of the heart. So we're allowing God to guide us in matters of the heart. We have to make a choice to be guided by the Lord. Next week, I plan to talk about guarding our heart, but this week, I want to talk about guiding our heart, guiding our heart. David wrote this psalm, and he was talking about God's protection and how he looked up to the hills from help for his help. Now, you may or may not know that David was described as a king, as a man after God's own heart. But listen, David went through some stuff before he even got to that point where he and God were tight like this. David made some uh King David was amazing. I love reading his story. In addition to being in Psalms, the Bible study plan that I'm on, I've also been wrapping up the first book of Samuel. So I'm going to read a little bit from there too as we go on. But the first book of Samuel, so good, so much about King David. That's just amazing. His heart for God. And as I said, tonight we're talking about being guided. This was his prayer. He was looking up to God for help and for guidance, right? Psalm 121, verses 1 through 3. That's what we hear. But I love how David followed the Lord. David followed the Lord whether he was in a wilderness season, on the run from King Saul, or whether it was one of those moments of celebration. He still followed the Lord. He allowed the Lord to guide his heart. He made a decision. He made a choice. There were several directions that he could have went into, King David, and he usually chose the Lord. Ah, it's so beautiful. He's such a great example. It reminds me of our choices and my choices. Um, as I've said in the past few weeks and the past few lives, that a lot of drama, trauma, stress has been going on in my life, at work in particular. But for many of us, we have it maybe on the home front, dealing with COVID, being around family all day for some of us. I am one that needs to go out to work, but it's a lot of things that many of us have been experiencing, right? And so did David. I love his story. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, he's so amazing. But one of the things that I want to talk about tonight is just forgiveness and getting into right relationship. Us guiding our hearts in that direction. Why? Because it's easy to say, I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm done with this. But I love the example of King David and how he protected King Saul. This is before David was king. How he protected King Saul even before, even even before David became king, and he protected Saul in the midst of Saul trying to kill him. That to me is a perfect example of David asking God for help, and like we talked about in verse 1 and 2 of Psalm 121, and then of him being guided and guarded by the Lord, who never allowed him to fall and who will never allow us to fall. So, First Samuel chapter 24, I'm going to read verses 12 through 15. This is New Living Translation. And this is just a reminder of us allowing God to guide our heart. That's what we read about. And I just want you and I to be encouraged by what King David, before he was king, said to King Saul while Saul was the king. Right? David was going to be the next king, but King Saul was the king. And King Saul was trying to kill David because, well, I think he was jealous. He was angry. He was just going through some stuff, right? Y'all know how we have people that try to kill our spirit. They try to kill our joy, our peace, our sense of normality. And it's not the people, it's the spirit behind them, just like it was the spirit behind King David. That's a whole nother story. We're gonna talk about that next week. But here's what David said to King Saul after he did not kill King Saul, and he could have. He said, may the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you are trying to do to me, but I will never harm you. As the old proverb says, from evil people come evil deeds, so you can be sure I will never harm you. Who is the king of Israel trying to catch anyway? Should he spend his time chasing one who is as worthless as a dog, as a dead dog, or a single flea? David was talking about himself. May the Lord therefore judge which of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate and he will rescue me from your power. That I love that. I love how David allowed his heart to be guided by the principles of God. I'm telling you, if we allow ourselves to be guided by the principles of God, we're going to be in a good place. And that was just the first time that King David allowed himself to be guided by God. He allowed his heart. And as many of things he could have thought, as many of things that he could have said in the midst of being pursued for death. Ah, how many of us are in places that are dead, or that somebody is being used by the enemy to still kill and destroy our peace and our joy. Now, it happens, and it's not intentional oftentimes, but it happens on a regular basis where the enemy is coming for us and coming for us. But King David, First Samuel chapter 24, verses 12 through 15, which I just read, shows us that even in the midst of the wilderness, even in the midst of all of the trying, how the enemy tries to take us off track, that we can still guide our hearts into a loving relationship. We can still be real, but we can also say, hey, you know what? It's going to be okay because God has got me. Oh my God, I'm so excited about the fact that God has us. So I have a friend. I just want to share this prayer that my friend wrote, and my friend shared this prayer with me today because it reminded me of King David and all that he went through to guide his heart. You know, for me, lately I've been feeling like I could scream with some of the stressful situations that I've been encountering at work. And one of my friends reminded me, hey, Lavon, you have to guide your heart. You have to be able to tell yourself, your heart, your emotions, your mind, your will, all of that. We're going to line up. We're not going to get caught up in what this person is saying and doing. We're going to be focused on the fact that God is still in control and that you still have the power of God residing in you. So we have the power to speak. Now I forgot because I was all up in my flesh. I was all up in my feelings, and my heart was becoming hard. So I had to guide my heart out of a hard place into a place of forgiveness. Did you hear what I said? I needed God to help me to get from a hardened heart to a softened heart where he could guide me into what he wanted me to do. So I was talking to my friend about it, and I was encouraging her to do the same thing that God has allowed me to do recently, to just reframe my thoughts coming straight from the heart. So this is the prayer that my friend wrote, and I thought it was so beautiful. I was like, girl, that's so good. I'm going to share it. Got to share it live because your prayer is just, it's so beautiful and so heartfelt. She's a new Christian, and I just love the purity of her heart and how she guided her heart through this difficult situation. So what she wrote is, today I pray for the strength to resist the enemy's negativity. I trust in God to guide me and everyone concerning me away from negativity and unholy spirits. With God's presence and protection, the enemy shall not win or overcome us. Did y'all hear that? This is from, again, a friend who is a new Christian. She doesn't just know all the Bible. That came straight from her heart. What? She guided her heart into a different place, even though she was in the midst of a trying time. So I pushed. I was like, girlfriend, we can do this. You can control, you can change, you can shift, you can guide your heart into a different perspective. Today, I pray for strength to resist the enemy's negativity. I trust God to guide me and everybody concerning me away from negativity and unholy spirits. With God's presence and protection, the enemy shall not win or overcome us. What? That is so powerful. It's so powerful. It also reminds me of what King David said the second time. This is before David was king. King Saul tried to kill him. He was still tripping. Um, I don't know if I said that right. What I meant is that David could have taken revenge, but David allowed his heart to be softened. So the first scripture that I read, which was 1 Samuel 24:12 through 15. I might have described that wrong. But that was after David could have killed Saul. He could have been like, I got you. Like, I mean, he was right up on him. Saul didn't even know what was going on. David could have taken him out, but David guided his heart into a place where he walked in beautiful forgiveness. I love it. He did it twice. The second time, what David said was even more powerful. 1 Samuel chapter 26, verses 22 through 25. I love this. I'm wrapping it up, but this is so good. I want to share it with you guys. This is what David is saying to Saul after David could have killed Saul, but David decided, even though this man is trying to kill me, I'm not going to do him the same way. I'm not going to do it. He allowed his heart to be guided by the principles of God. And this is what David said to Saul. Here's your spear, O king, David replied. Let one of your young men come over here and get it. The Lord gives his own reward for doing good and being loyal. And I refuse to kill you, even though the Lord placed you in my power. For you are the Lord's anointed one. Now may the Lord value my life, even as I have valued yours today. May he rescue me from all my troubles. And this is what Saul says to David. So Saul responds to David, blessings on you, my son David. You will do many heroic deeds, and you will surely succeed. Then David went away and returned home. I love that. David could have killed Saul, but David guided his heart into a different direction, a direction of forgiveness, a direction of faithfulness to God, a direction of friendship, despite the fact that Saul was trying to take him out. Did you hear what I said? David guided his heart. He did not allow the circumstances to dictate whether or not he was going to follow God's way or follow his flesh way, follow God's way or follow what the enemy would have him to do. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I am encouraged as I remind myself daily to guide my heart. When my heart and my emotions want to go in one direction, I am so reminded and so encouraged by Psalm 121, verses 1 through 3, that I can guide my heart along with God's help. And I am so encouraged by King David and how he was steadfast and immovable when twice he could have absolutely taken Saul out. But he had a heart that was guided by the love of God. My goodness. How beautiful is it to have a heart that is guided by the love of God and the forgiveness of God, the same way that God has forgiven us. And then I also read to you guys a prayer from my friend who is a new Christian. I loved it. Her heart was, God, help guide me. My heart is troubled right now. I'm troubled by the situation, but I need you. I need you right now. I need you today, Lord, to help me get through this situation. So my brother, my sister, I encourage you to guide your heart, even if you're in the midst of a wilderness experience. I know I am. I'm still going through it, work. But I thank God that just like David in the midst of it, there are some wonderful things that happen. There are some times that I can get even. There's some times that I can have a smart mouth. And I slipped into that a few weeks ago. But now I'm being soft and I'm guiding my heart into a place of peace, into a place of love where I am returning some of the nasty stuff that is being said and done. I am repaying it with good, the same way that King David did. I just love his story. I pray that his story has encouraged you the same way that it's encouraged me. We can be faithful just like David was to Saul. He did not do revenge when he could have. David absolutely could have taken revenge. He absolutely could have killed King Saul, but he didn't, right? And so when people are saying things to us in a way that's very unbecoming of God, we absolutely can take revenge. We can cuss them out. We can fuss them out. We can curse them behind their back. We can talk about them. We can do all of that stuff. Or we can guide our hearts into a soft place of love and peace, and we can cover them. We can speak life over them. We can pray. One of my friends last week reminded me that I needed to write out my prayers to guide my heart when I was having a hard time, ready to choke a brother or sister. I'm just being real. I have those moments where I'm ready to take somebody out. Not that I would really do it, but that's how I feel sometimes. So anyway, we're talking about guiding our hearts. We can guide our hearts into a place of forgiveness, peace, and love. And guys, the fruit of that, just like King David, I just read it in verse number 25. Saul couldn't say anything except blessings on you. What? Saul, who was trying to take David out, ended up blessing him. That is what happens when we guide our hearts, despite what we're in. When we guide our hearts and out, which translates to our actions, which translates to the words that we speak. When we are guided by the love of God, woo! When our hearts are guided by the love and the peace and the purity and the unity of God, it's such a beautiful thing. So I encourage you today to join me, even when it's hard, even when it's oppressed, even when you feel like you're in the wilderness. We can do this. We can do this together. Why? Because just like David said in Psalm 121, I looked up to the mountains from where my help comes from. God helped David to guide his own heart and his own actions into something that's pleasing to God. So be blessed, be blessed, be blessed, be blessed. Guide your heart into a peaceful, soft place. And I promise you that even your enemies will be at peace with you. And certainly the Lord will bless you, even as he did for David, even as he's doing for me. Be encouraged. We can do this. We got this. Have a wonderful week. Good night.